Hello, everyone. My name is Jacqueline, and I'm the Community Science Outreach Coordinator for the Pacific Grove Museum of Natural History. And welcome to this month's Digital Science Saturday, Water Wild. This morning at 10 a.m., we had all of our live recorded videos and virtual field trips through our watershed posted on our website. And today we're being joined by Marie Butcher from the Carmel River Watershed Conservancy, who's going to teach us through an interactive nature journaling exercise and activity. So thank you, Marie, for joining us today.
Thank you, Jacqueline, for inviting me and all of the partners. I hope everybody got a chance to view the videos. So just a shout out to Elkhorn Slough and Watsonville Wetlands and Salinas River Watershed, PG Museum of Natural History, of course, and our organization, which is called Carmel River Watershed Conservancy. And actually my director is online. So hi, Abby, and your daughter. Very sweet. What's her name? You guys want to say hi?
Emma. Sorry, I just had to unmute. Yep, it's Emma. Thanks so much. Yeah, this is great.
Thanks for coming today. This is like a rare moment where I think it's going to be quiet enough in my garden for me to do this outside. And so I hope you all are in a comfortable place in your house and hopefully near a window where you can see outside. I know it's been frustrating for everyone to have to be in the shelter in place situation and to kind of really monitor our outside activities. So today we're going to kind of rediscover our own backyards and rediscover just kind of like how much new things there are to find right within a very small area. So first off, just because it is the water theme, I wanted to just come back to the idea that we're all connected through water. And this is our little graphic about Carmel River Watershed, about we are the watershed, right? So that we all are connected. We are like primarily water, our bodies and our land. This is the Carmel River Watershed in the map form. And it is primarily, you know, all these little tributaries and everything. And and then there's this water table right behind me, right underground. It's really cool. I get to go, I have Seasonal Creek right up the street, and I walk up in my neighborhood and find little sources of water. So tell me, so I'd love to just see who's here, and if you guys have water in your neighborhood and you have a favorite tree, because we're going to be doing I could have called it water stories, but we're going to actually do tree stories today. So since it's kind of an intimate group, I'd love to just have everybody say hi and where are you zooming in from. And let's hear about if you have water in your backyard and if you go on neighborhood walks, that kind of thing. So who's here? Can we go?
Oh, sorry, did I interrupt anyone?
No, go for it.
My name's Julia. I live in Monterey, and I don't have water really close to my backyard, but there is a little creek a little closer to the library in Monterey that's nearby me. And so I think that's probably seasonal. It seems like sometimes of the year it's rushing a little bit, and others it's pretty dry. But it's always cool to see what's around the creek and what interesting plants are there.
Absolutely, great.
And my favorite tree, that's a hard one. I have a lot of beautiful trees in my neighborhood. I always like seeing the pines because I'm on the edge of the pine forest. So I have to go for the Monterey pines.
Great. Thank you, Julia. Let's go next. I see a hand over there. Two little girls. Go for it. You know how to unmute yourself?
We live by Natividad Creek in Salinas.
Oh, wonderful.
Your favorite tree?
My favorite tree is a sycamore tree. Mine too.
Sycamore. Wow, I love sycamores. And we're gonna so be thinking about your relationship with your tree, your favorite tree, whether it's your backyard tree or a tree in your neighborhood or a tree that maybe was at a former neighborhood. But be thinking about that story that lives inside you that goes with your tree. Because we're going to be bringing those out as we go along today. So thank you. What were your names?
My name is Adeline. My name is Ella.
Ella and Adeline?
Adeline.
Adeline. Thank you. Anybody else want to share? Emma and Abby?
Okay, we're ready. Okay, tell them about where we live. Carmel Valley?
Yeah, Carmel Valley.
And by which river? Which river? Carmel River.
Carmel River.
Carmel River. Good.
And
Oh,
then
and you've
what's
got
your
an
favorite
older
tree?
brother.
A Christmas tree.
Oh, Christmas tree, of course.
Well, my favorite trees are the redwood trees. We have the redwood grove right back in Garland Ranch, Herc here, and I love that part of the trail past the terrace trail.
Absolutely. Good. Yeah, so I'm going to tell you a story about the redwoods in my backyard in a little bit. So redwoods are such a special tree. My favorite too.
Yeah.
So do we have two Julias on the call? Julia Brooker, you want to tell us about you?
I'd love to. I also live in Salinas, and I live close to Natividad Creek Park. Ella and Edelyn are my nieces.
Okay, great.
Yes, so they're super cute, and we love to go for walks together. We'll go down to the creek. My favorite tree, though, is the Fremantle tree. I just love how flowery it is during certain times of the year. Oops, sorry, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, sorry, which kind of tree did you say?
It's called the Fremantle. The
So-
Fremantle tree? Yes.
Wonderful.
I like the flowery, showy trees.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, and it's great time for that. Great time of year for that.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
We have some people sharing in the chat. So
okay.
Annie said that she lives in a little bit a mile from the Monterey Bay, and her favorite tree is the redwood tree in her neighbor's yard. And then Laura from California said there's not a lot of water near me, but her favorite tree is the wisteria tree. And I can share mine. I live in Marina, not near a whole lot of water right now. Growing up in Southern California, my favorite tree was the avocado tree.
Nice.
And but I can't forget the first time I saw a redwood as a teenager. So.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Oh, I've got a little beam of light coming in. Everybody see that? So I have a very special redwood grove here behind me. But before we get to my tree story, we're going to do a little exercise where we just kind of like settle in a little bit more to think about how we can be better observers and really you know, like a good scientist is actually observing the same spot over and over again. So we get to do that in our own backyards, right? Which is pretty cool. So I have been observing, I have a couple of Pacific slope flycatchers. They're the little songbirds, and they are nesting in my eaves. And I just saw that the babies are there today in the nest, which is super cool. I'm really excited. And then across the fence, I have some ducks. And so I get to listen to my ducks. They're not my ducks, they're my neighbor's ducks, but the ducks. And then there's usually in the morning, oh, here they are, right on cue. The crows are super loud here, right? The crows, they're always talking. The jays, the scrub jays. And there's also a lot of juncos this year, the little dark-eyed juncos, the little cute birds. So what I want us to do is together is to start off with the 3 questions that I gave you in the little video, if you saw it today. And they're super easy questions, and we're gonna kind of journal them together, and then we're going to, at the end, we're gonna come up with our own little tree story, and we're also gonna come up with a collective poem or something to share by the end of today. So my first question is the really easy one, right? What do you see? And so let's come back a little closer to my redwood grove. And what can you notice about the grove? So we want to notice like big details and then little details, and then we can start recording them. So we can record some of the things in the chats too. And I'm going to have Jacqueline help me monitor the chat, because it's hard to talk and read the chat at the same time. Does anybody want to tell me about an observation you have just about these redwoods, or redwoods in general, that you have observed? What makes a redwood so special, and why? What do we know about redwoods? Anybody want to share? I'm gonna go.
All right, Emma always wants to share. Okay, go ahead.
Great.
What do you want to say about the redwoods? Oh, they're super tall.
They're super tall.
They are super tall. In fact, they are one of the tallest trees ever, right?
And lots of things live at the top of the redwoods, right? Maybe?
Yeah, and it's this whole ecosystem, right?
Yeah.
Right? What I really like, can everybody see this little patch of this tree, part of the tree right here? Can everybody see that bark? What do you notice about that bark? Do you notice how wavy it is? Can you see? Is my camera good enough? So we can actually see the water. Sorry, we can actually see the water in the bark, which is super cool when you think about it. You can see where the water is conducting up inside the tree. And that's a process that's, it's this tension between the xylem and phloem in the tree, right? That makes the water conduct up from the roots up to the very tip of the crown. So I would like to invite everybody to take a couple minutes, and you can, and I would like you to write down a couple sentences, or if you're with a parent, you can write down a couple things, either about this redwood tree that you see behind me, or about a tree that you see outside your window, or a tree that you remember about. And just describe what you see. You can talk about the color, the shade, there's different shades of green. There's, you can talk about that it's a whole community, right? That it includes a family up. I hear there's some nests up here, so I know that there's a family living, family of birds living up here. So I'd like you to record what you actually see. And then we are going to, collate some of our observations as we go along here. So let's just take a couple minutes. And if anybody wants to share something, I'll write it down for the group. Does anybody have an observation for our redwood tree here? In addition to it being super tall, like Emma said. What else? Yeah, Julia M.
That the fronds, some of them are a darker green, and it looks like the newer ones are shooting out a little bit of a lighter green color. So it's cool to see the differences in color just in the redwood fronds.
Right. So do you have trees that are shooting out new growth in your backyard and that you can observe? These trees are probably over 120 years old in my backyard, and they were the man who planted these trees was an artist. His Charles Rollo Peters of this original Bohemian artist community in Monterey, just of a few people. And so he planted these trees, and he planted some cypress. And I'm right in the middle of Monterey, so it's like I'm really lucky that these trees were planted, and somebody thought ahead to plant trees that, you know, the man who planted them, he probably never, he only saw them maybe half of this height, right? So think about the longevity of trees. And what other things can we see? And then and the next question is, what do you hear? So fortunately, today is relatively quiet. Yesterday was not. The construction crew is redoing my streets. So there were steamrollers and earthquakes, and it was very noisy. So I'm really lucky that we got to do this today and not yesterday. But I'm wondering if anybody can hear birdsong outside of your own window, or and if you could record a couple sentences of what you hear. So 2 sentences for each prompt. What do you see? What do you hear? And then our third prompt is going to be, what do you wonder? So tell me, if anybody wants to share, what do you hear when you really pay attention closely to your environment? And when is a good time? When is a good time for listening? I think a good time for listening for me is first thing in the morning, because I can hear the songbirds singing, and there aren't a lot of there's not a lot of ambient noise or noise pollution. Does anybody want to? Oh, there's those crows. They're always talking. Does anybody else have crows in their yard?
I can hear a dove hooing.
Yeah.
Hooing of a dove right now. And Laura mentioned in the chat that she spotted a towhee making a trilling call. And the house finch makes little chirps, and the males sing sometimes.
Yes, great. And I saw a question about the Pacific flycatchers. Yeah, it's really hard to get a picture of them. And I'm very reluctant to get too close to the nest. And I tried to get a picture for you guys, but it just wasn't sharp enough. But if I get a good one, I will definitely send it along to go with the video. Yeah, so a lot of you have different birds in your very backyard.
Why? We have one over here. Emma, do you want to talk about what the hummingbird, what it sounds like? You hear the hummingbird? She said it sounds like whoosh and
Great. Excellent.
yeah. You have to listen really closely for the hummingbird sounds.
Absolutely. They're so fast, aren't they?
Yes.
So when we go on our nature walks in Palo Corona Regional Park, we usually stop at the pond first, which if you saw the video, that's we heard the trilling sound, the mating call actually of the red-winged blackbird, which is really impressive. They're like calling, right, making a lot of attention, right, to attract a partner right now, and they're really loud. And yesterday, I also was really lucky to have seen and heard at a distance a couple of red-tailed hawks who were also in a mating dance, kind of dancing and kind of like almost just like a little touch in the air. It was super cool. And that was right above Inspiration Point. So, you know, the parks are open right now. You can do safe distance, socially distanced walking with your masks, and you can see these types of things. So in addition to going out in your backyard, we also want to encourage you to get out in nature in a safe way. And I would love to hear another share about sounds, because sometimes we don't give as much attention to sounds. And as you, and I want to have one for the group that we can then collate together. So everybody should have a couple of sentences for what do you see and what do you hear. So what's one for the group for what do you hear? That's Ella. Ella, do you girls have and Adeline, do you have something that you've been listening to and hearing? In your neighborhood? Any bird sounds? Do you have a lot of birds?
Yeah.
Yeah, do you know what kind of birds they are? If they're songbirds or what kind of birds?
Doves.
Doves. Yeah, they make a really pretty cooing sound, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Emma, what kind of, sorry, are you finished, Ella?
Oh no. And the wind.
The wind. Yes. So that was one of my favorite sounds that I posted in the video. I don't know if you listened to the video, but I recorded the wind through the cottonwood leaves, which is one of my absolute favorite sounds. So that is a really special sound. And yes, Ariel posted that she's been hearing the red-winged blackbirds that make a really metallic sounding noise. Yeah. Emma, what is your share?
What sound do you hear?
Hopping.
Like a little thing.
A little tiny sound.
A popping? Oh, you know, a little popping, like a little.
If they're hopping on the ground.
Oh, the hopping of the birds.
Yeah.
Nice.
You could be really quiet for that.
So the Pacific Slope flycatcher is one that makes a really distinct little just kind of doot, 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 little one note peep. So it's really distinctive, and we can listen to him and her. In fact, they share the parenting, which is really cool. They seem to be always, they've been nesting in my eaves every year that I've been here. This is my third spring at this house, and they come and they nest in my eaves where it's safe and sheltered, and they go there every spring and make their little nest. And there's usually only like a couple of babies, and I try and monitor them carefully because there's a lot of predators. All right, so let's do the wonder question. So what is something that you wonder about? What do you wonder about these trees, about the connections between water and the trees, and maybe the tree story that you are thinking about? Are there things that you, even if you are a specialist or an expert in the room, there's still room for wonderment. So what are we curious about? Oh, I have a in the chat from David. How do the trees talk to each other? That's a really great question. And does anybody have any suggestions about how trees talk to each other? How do they, especially the redwoods, right? Because they're connected by a common root source. So how do they talk to each other? And I know that there's some people with some wisdom here. So one of the Julias, you want to try sharing anything about how do the trees talk to each other? Julia Birker.
One thing that I learned, I spent a month in Africa back in the day, and so it was cool doing game drives and learning about the giraffes. Giraffes would eat the trees, and the trees would send messages to the other trees downwind, but hey, there's giraffes here, they're eating us, so become very bitter so they won't eat you. And so through the wind is what I learned.
Wow, that's amazing. That's a great story. I love that. Yeah, like actually turning your, kind of changing your chemistry so that the giraffes don't want to eat you. That's pretty amazing, right? Pretty magical stuff.
Yeah, the trees are alive. It's crazy.
Yeah, they're talking to each other. So I'm going to bring you into my little magic fairy forest grove again. And I'm going to share my tree story with you. Hopefully I won't lose the connection. And then I'm going to invite some others to share their tree stories.
We have some other wonders.
Oh, good. Some other wonders. Emma wonders if the birds speak the same language or if they are different. What a great question. Yeah, I think within their own species, I'm sure they speak the same language, but across species, that's a really good question. Does anybody have any thoughts on that? Do they all speak the same language? That's the other Julia's thinking hard. What do you think, Julia M? Do you think that they can talk to each other?
I think maybe they must have some way to communicate with other trees and from different types of trees. So maybe there is a way they can warn each other. I can't think of any tree communication examples like Julia Brooker did, but I did think of how certain plants, I learned that they develop little dots under their leaves so bugs like butterflies don't lay eggs there. And so it's kind of a way for them to pass on the communication towards future generations of their plant, to kind of have these adaptations to not let bugs, lay eggs on them. But I don't think that's super related, but that's the only thing I can think of.
Great. So we've got two conversations going, though. One about the language between the trees and one about the language amongst the birds. And Laura shared that some birds will rely on alarm calls, noting predators from other species. And that I see a lot in this neighborhood, right? And the crows will go attack the hawks, and or if they see a predator coming to a nest, the jays will send out an alarm, right? So there's a lot of alarm signals that then other birds could tune into. Oh, there's a hawk coming, be careful. So yeah, thank you for that, Laura. David says birds may learn from the body language from other species of birds. That's interesting, the body language. I'd like to hear more about that. So as I get a little bit closer here to these trees that I'm feeling especially close to, I want to tell you my little tree story about them, and then I'm going to invite you all to share one of your tree stories. So my tree story is that this is a ring of, I call it the Grove of the Seven Sisters, because there's 6 significant redwoods and 1 cypress tree in the grove. And the redwoods are all connected. Obviously, they probably share a common root system and talk to each other. The cypress is on the other side of the fence, so but was probably planted around the same time, about 120 years ago or so, with the original owner of this property. And when I was just a few, well, it's been probably maybe a year ago, that I had a group of women here, and one of the ladies was 9 months pregnant. She was very, very pregnant. And so we gave her a little blessing inside the ring of the trees. And then we went inside, and we invited the baby to come whenever it was ready. And the baby came that night. And it was blessed by the trees and all of us. And it decided it was ready to come into the world. And the little baby's name is Cypress. And because there's only one Cypress, and that was her intended name anyway. But it was just it's a really sweet story about this particular ring of redwoods and the single cypress. So I would like to invite anybody who has a special tree story to share their tree story. And you can raise your hand, or if you're don't have your video on, you can indicate to us in the chat that you want to share something. And then we're going to collate our a line from everybody's story and put it all together. Make a big story. Yeah, so I see Ella and her sister again, ready.
Little cousin, he always looks at the palm tree.
Oh, he always looks at the palm tree.
Yeah, he's little and he's a baby.
Nice. And I see Emma's got a beautiful picture. Do you want to share your picture, Emma?
Sorry, we're getting very off track here with the pictures. We need to get back on track. Do you want to say a line about, we'll come back to us on the tree story. We're going to share a line about the tree story.
Okay, great. Does anybody have a little tree story to share? And then we're going to put, we're going to try and collate a line from everybody's story. If you could type your line in the chat, and then we're going to make a collective story. It's kind of crazy, I know, but it's really cool, because then it becomes like a prose poem. We tell our stories together.
Yeah.
So does anybody else have a special story? Oh, I see Julia Brooker, you've got a little friend there. Oh, that's the same. You guys are in the same house. Gotcha. Your niece.
Do you want to share a line about a tree?
All right. Does anybody else have a fun tree story? And when I say tree story, it's our relationship with the tree, right? What is maybe I'll ask the question a little bit differently. Like, did you have a special memory associated with a tree, either that you live with now, like at your next to your or near your current house in your current neighborhood, or one that you have a special memory about? David, who's on the line, says he has very fond memories of his tree fort as a youngster. And Julia says that the oak tree outside her window has whitish gray bark, pokey green leaves, moss fluttering around. Does anybody else have a story about
I would say we have very special memories of spending lots of time in the fall under the apple trees, picking apples when we go to Watsonville. And we have lots of pictures around the house of the apple trees.
Wonderful.
We were talking about that.
Nice. And we're starting to get our little sentences together. So we're going to collate our sentences. So Laura said, one of the mourning doves that comes to my yard sits in the tree. It's odd and can only coo once. The spotted towhee will crack sunflower seeds for that mourning dove. Wow, that's really special. They have a relationship. And so in Brenda's group, my baby cousin likes to stare at the palm tree outside of his house. Nice. So if we have any other shares, we're going to put them all together, and we're going to create a little collective story. And in fact, this coming issue in the Coast Weekly, or it's called the Monterey County Weekly, sorry, Monterey County Weekly, you will see a collective poem that was done by a group of attendees when I did a poetry workshop, and we all wrote a line of poetry together. And it's kind of like the same idea, and that poem's going to be in the June 4th edition of the Monterey County Weekly. So you guys can all contribute a line, and then we're going to read it together. And okay, Ariel says, resting in the shade of oak trees reminds me that I've escaped the concrete jungle I was born in. Yes. Okay. So if the people who have contributed sentences so far, if you wouldn't mind reading them out loud to the group, we can, it's kind of nice to hear all the different voices. Oh, did my, so starting from,
or wait, yeah, like Julia M started and then David.
Okay, yeah, so.
Should I read my little line?
Yes, please.
All right. The oak tree outside my window, right there, has whitish gray bark, pokey green leaves, and moths fluttering around.
Nice. David, do you want to read yours?
Yeah, I have very, very fond memories of my tree fort when I was a youngster.
Nice. Laura, do you want to read yours? Or we can, maybe Jacqueline, do you want to read Laura's?
I can do that. One of the mourning doves that comes to my yard sits in the tree. It is odd and can only coo once. The spotted towhee will crack sunflower seeds for that mourning dove.
Good. And we have one from Ella and Adeline.
My baby cousin likes to stare at the palm tree outside of his house.
Great. And I think Jacqueline, that's you.
I remember getting avocados from my neighbor's trees with my brothers.
Nice. And Ariel?
Sure. Oh, I think I'm muted by the house.
We can hear you.
I'm not, okay, sorry. Resting in the shade of oak trees reminds me that I've escaped the concrete jungle I was born in.
Great. And Abby?
Okay, we came up with a redwood one too. I love my time on the trails among the redwoods while the light comes through the branches and the surroundings appear like a cathedral. I actually have a cool photo. And I'll share it is my background here.
That's happening live for me right now. I'm getting the light beaming through the forest here.
You can see it there, yeah. That's kind of what it looks like.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Doesn't that look cool?
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So
we have one more added into the chat.
Oh, great.
Hi, my name is Haruki, meaning spring tree in Japanese. My parents want me to grow up like a big tree, giving a peaceful place for many, many animals.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you, Haruki. Spring tree, that's gorgeous. I teach a lot of international students also at the Middlebury Institute of International Studies, and normally we would have a group of Japanese students this summer from Osaka. But unfortunately, due to the COVID-19, they can't come this year. But yeah, I always look forward to seeing them and hearing their stories. So I found a little story, we could call it a little nature journal story that my daughter composed some years ago. So I would encourage you, if you get inspired, to put your collection together with some artwork. So especially you younger folks that are wanting to share some of your art. This is a little story that she created a long time ago. She's in her 20s now, but so I thought it was pretty sweet, and I thought I would share it with you today. So there's a little fairy flower pouch where you can put some flowers for the fairies, and then it's a story about Alex. So little Alex was watching too much TV one lazy Sunday afternoon or morning. His mom said, "Alex, my darling, your eyes will fall right out of their sockets if you keep watching that screen." His dad said, "Go play outside. It's a beautiful day." "But I don't have anyone to play with," little Alex replied. "You'd be surprised," his mom winked. Alex was confused and curious all at once. He clicked off the TV and dragged his foot to the big, lush garden. So here's Alex. Oh, it looks like the butterfly is kind of a mask. That's funny. Or the fairy. He crossed his arms and slumped down, sitting in the tall grasses. "I'm bored," Alex thought. But just as he was about to go back inside, a periwinkle butterfly landed on the tip of his nose. But it wasn't a butterfly at all. It was a fairy. All right, so raise your hand if you believe in fairies. Yay. I have fairies in my garden for sure. The fairy said in her sing-song voice, "Alex, so wonderful you've joined us today." "How do you know my name?" Alex asked. "Oh, don't be silly. We all know you," she said. "All of you?" Alex asked. She giggled. "Yes, there's lots of us that live here. My name is Elva. I'm the protector of the garden." "What do you protect it from?" Alex asked curiously. "Well, there are bluebirds, deer, gophers, trolls, and many other bothers that like to nibble on the garden," right? Does anybody have any visitors to your garden that perhaps maybe nibble on some of your plants? Yeah. Are there good bothers? Alex wondered. Of course, she said, but they're not bothers, they're helpers. There are ladybugs, honeybees, hummingbirds, butterflies, pixies, and millions more. Come, she said, let's meet some of the other garden beings. She fluttered to a nearby dandelion. This is Mr. Dandelion. Isn't he cute? So you guys can draw your own very dandy lion. That's just a weed, Alex said. The dandelion opened its eyes from a deep slumber. Pardon me, he said, and then cleared his throat. Alex was in awe. He was talking to a fairy and a garden plant. Let me properly introduce myself. I am Mr. Dandelion, king of the weeds. Does anybody else have dandelions in their garden? Do you think of it as a pest or a weed? No, good. What do you guys do with your dandelions? Does anybody
Good for the bees.
They're for the bees. Yeah, the bees love them. You know that they can also be used in teas and other things? Dandelion greens. You know, specialty stores will sell you dandelion greens for a pretty price, but you can get them right in your garden. And they're really good for digestion if you make a tea out of them. Wow, Alex said. The dandelion dozed back to sleep, letting out a loud snore. He's very lazy during the summer, Elva explained. Little Alex nodded. Come over here, she said, tugging Alex's shirt. He followed her to a shaded patch of the garden. Those are the glorias. Does anybody have any memories of special flowers when you were little, or as you are little, or if you from your childhood or your present moment childhood? I have memories of gladiolas that were taller than me, and I would talk to the gladiolas. Does anybody have any flowers that are really special to you?
The calla lilies are really special to me. They remind me of my grandmother.
Nice. Yeah. And Ella and Elaine?
When I was little, we would pick out flowers to give to my mom and our uncle and aunt.
That's really sweet.
Like Julia.
Nice. So maybe you can add another line in your story about the flowers. So hopefully by the end of today, you'll get inspired to do some more writing about the flowers and the trees and their relationship all together in your garden. That's kind of the goal of today. So here are the morning glories. I'll just kind of skip to the end here. There's the morning glories, and then the little trumpeters, that are trumpeting. And guess what? Alex was having such a good time and tour of the garden that he kind of lost track of time. And then it wasn't until his mom called him in for breakfast that he realized he had to go. And so he changed his whole attitude about not being able to get together with his friends, because he had all these friends in the garden, and he had made friends with the flowers, and he had made friends with the trees and the fairies. And so I would encourage you all to do the same, because we are in a time where we get to talk to the trees. We get to learn their language. We get to learn the language of the birds. We get to learn the language of the flowers and the waters. And it's a really important time to talk to them. So you can write, if you make a practice of it. This is what I recommend. If you make a practice of your writing, do it every morning at the same time. Maybe talk to I'll talk to the flycatchers, and then in the early evening is also a really nice time to listen to nature, and before sunset, right? I'll talk to maybe the trees and check in with my garden. So does anybody have a practice that you do as far as writing and journaling in your garden?
I can share. I don't journal regularly, but every morning I go out and have my coffee on my back patio and water all of my plants. Well, I water half my plants one day and half the following day. So that's a really nice time for me, because I get to see all the birds that are getting up and moving about.
Nice.
Me too. Mine's kind of like Jacqueline. I am bad at keeping a journal. I need to pick that up a little more. But every morning I do look outside, and we have a couple scrub jay chicks that are exploring and learning about life and stuff. So I always look for them, and sometimes I see them like foraging around for little pieces of food.
Nice. I think the thing about writing is that you have to be consistent and dedicated. So just like anything else, right? So if you are going to write a story, or if you're going to write a poem, or if you're just going to do some journaling, try and do a little bit every day. And you'll be surprised at how then, instead of it being something that's difficult or challenging, it's something you look forward to doing every day. And you can start writing more and more. And then you can become better at your nature observations and learn more about the language of the trees and the water and the breeze. So think of the 3 questions. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you wonder? And try and integrate that into your kind of your daily practice. I want to just share a couple of things that you might enjoy also reading. So I have a friend, Paolo Bertoin, who put this book together called Passion for Place, and it's all about the Carmel River Watershed, and there's all sorts of poems and beautiful stories about going to the bucket and all these different places along the river. And there's her beautiful paintings. This is something that is just such a lush book. And it's the type of thing that you could also, you could contribute to, and we could make another book. There's another wonderful one. I don't know if you all know Tom Killian, but he does these exquisite woodcuts. And then there's just like all these wonderful stories about the nature. And so I would encourage you during this time where you're spending a lot of time, maybe more by yourself than you're used to, but hopefully close to a window, or if you can go out on a nature walk, and then write right after your nature walk or during your nature walk. Some people have the habit of even talking onto their phone and recording. So that's something that you could certainly do too. So I think I would like to read a little poem to you, and then we will be probably closing shortly. And this is from Mary Oliver, who is kind of like the queen of all things nature and beautiful words about nature. So her poem is entitled Mysteries. Mysteries, yes. Truly we live with mysteries too marvelous to be understood. How grass can be nourishing in the mouths of lambs. How rivers and stones are forever in allegiance with, while we ourselves dream of rising. How 2 hands touch and the bonds will never be broken. How people come from delight or the scars of damage to the comfort of a poem. Let me keep my distance always from those who think they have the answers. Let me keep company always with those who say, look, and laugh in astonishment and bow their heads. So that's Mary Oliver, and she's a wonderful poet. I would recommend her work as well. Yeah, I would love to see if anybody else has something that bubbled up for them for their tree story before we close out our session today. Okay, I'm going to share my screen for a moment, and just as kind of a little reminder of what we talked about. It's about today's about becoming a better observer, about being more keen with your senses. It's about asking these questions. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you wonder? It's about recording your observations in your own backyards, and then asking yourself that question: how do you feel when you see and you learn that tree's story, when you hear the songbirds? And then if you get to go out on a nature walk, make some specific observations. Like I was on a nature walk yesterday, and we saw these beautiful really scarlet, beautiful colors of Indian paintbrush next to the fern. It just made a beautiful tapestry. And the oak woodland forest, and the red-tailed hawks that were soaring and doing a kind of a mating dance in the sky above us. So I would love if anybody wants to send in their tree story. If you get inspired to do some writing in your journal, you can send it in to us. And I would also like to recommend some resources for you. If you want to learn more about oaks in particular, there's a huge oak study at Hastings Reserve. They have the longest standing study of acorn woodpeckers and oaks. There's also a lot of apps that you can get right on your phone to help you. There's one called the Nature's Notebook, and you can be part of the phenology study and study the same trees over time in your neighborhood. And you can be doing a citizen science project that way. There's also iNaturalist and Birder to help you identify birds. And so we'd like to invite you to send your submissions to CWD, which is California Wildlife Day, which we didn't get to have this year, cwdsubmissions@gmail.com. And our other invitation is for you to at this time, join our Eco Challenge. And we can put this also in the chat, or post it later. It's also posted on our Facebook. But the Eco Challenge is about how we can become more sustainable. And this is the best time for us to be thinking about how we can conserve water and start doing more gardening and really taking better care of ourselves, the wildlife, and each other. So I hope you all are doing that. And I want to especially thank the Pacific Grove Museum of Natural History and Jacqueline for being our host today. And of course, if you go out to the parks, you use your mask and safe social distancing, and enjoy the fact that the parks, Monterey Peninsula Regional Park District, is keeping the parks open to us so that we can do that right now. Our group is called Carmel River Watershed Conservancy, and our goal is to conserve the river and preserve and protect, and also to educate. And we're doing some virtual tours, which we will be posting on our site, so you guys can visit more sections of the watershed that we would normally do with our field trips. And we do have social media pages. So I'm really grateful that everybody showed up today, and I hope you will keep writing in your journal. Ask yourself those 3 questions, and submit a tree story to me, and we would be happy to collate them and post them on our website. Also, if anybody is interested in more reading, the book that we were reading for the book club for Big Sur Land Trust is called The Overstory. I highly recommend it. And it's about these also little tree stories and vignettes that have to do with people and their connection with trees and the land. Again, thank you all for showing up today and spending a little time in the afternoon thinking about trees, your connections with trees, and the water story, the tree story, your flower story. And thank you, Jacqueline, for hosting us today.
Thank you, Marie. Appreciate that you were able to take a Saturday afternoon and transport us to your garden. I really appreciate that. And thank you to Carmel River Watershed Conservancy and all the amazing work that they're doing right now, creating these virtual field trips around their parks, and just helping people who are stuck at home get out into nature and still find a connection to nature. It's really important that each of us tries to connect to nature in our own way each and every day. So thank you so much for this reminder and these tools to help us connect more. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you. And just a reminder, we will have different tours from different parts of the river, just as we would for our live tours. So the Palo Corona was our first, and then we will be looking at the lagoon, also be looking at Garland and the upper watershed with Los Padres Dam. So be looking for those on our website. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, I put their website in the chat. I also tried to type out all the books that she was sharing in the chat. You can email me if you missed any of the books, and I can get those out to you. Thank you all for joining us for today's Digital Science Saturday, Water Wild. If you haven't seen all of our videos, they're already posted on our website. I put the link in the chat. We have a watershed, Palo Corona Regional Park virtual tour from Marie. We also have an exploration of both the Elkhorn Slough and Watsonville Slough, and some nature video from Upper Carr Lake. So you can use all of these virtual tours and have your nature journal ready and write down what you see and what you hear and what you wonder as you're watching these videos. Everyone, I hope you have a happy Saturday, and thank you for joining us.
Hey, thank you so much. Nice to meet everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Your stories.